Saddle up, cowboy. That's what they say. Cowboys who herd cows, riding on a saddle made of cows. I wasn't gonna. Yeah, this was. This isn't the one I was gonna do today. This isn't the one I was gonna do today. I was gonna do this and how it relates to the Wizard of Oz, David and Diogenes. I may touch on that, but mostly the Wizard of Oz in this shape, which is buried in well, not even buried, it's one of those obvious things, as they say, placed in plain sight as it relates to the Wizard of Oz and our Wizard of Oz characters. The bear, the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper, which we put in the punch bowl. I have to refer to my other stuff. I got some more to say about that, but I'm trying to clean up my messy life. I've made some progress. Did a lot of dishes this weekend. I'll spare myself the embarrassment of my bathroom, which is an atrocity. But the only reason I decided to clean up my environment was because of the inspiration from the quote-unquote, but not just a quote-unquote mathematical code in the Wizard of Oz, which relates back to, and I can't recall the movie, but I've seen the clip of Michael Jackson in The Wiz, which has to do with piss and pistus, which is faith. Yeah, the first synthetically, what was it? The first synthetically, I could have this wrong. I myself will have to look this up. I'm going to say, look it up, but I'm talking to myself. Look it up. The first synthetically reproduced or produced organic compound, or uric acid, also ammonia, and how that relates to bile and bright green bile, and red bile, and different types of blue blood, the blood in the human veins of carbon dioxide, deoxygenated, different ways of anaerobic fermentation, never mind the possibility of fully aerobic fermentation in the blood. Is that a possibility? Never mind what they do to horseshoe crabs. Never mind the blue blood of blueberries, or the copper-like blood fatty blood versus high, I don't know what it would be called. Like we have water blood, but like some beetles have coppery, I believe, fatty blood. So there's a lot there, and there's a lot of people looking for a lot of different things. What I was looking for today was a better version of health. Maybe it doesn't look as though I've cleaned up that much, but it's kind of like detox. When you're cleaning out the bowels, when you're cleaning out the cells. You can't make omelets without breaking a few eggs. And that's where we're gonna hit. That's where we're gonna hit first, I think. So we're gonna set it up. I got 59 minutes, 54 now, about. Let's see if we can get this. So if I sit there now, this, I've talked about this painting before, but this was the rightmost piece of a painting I made back in 2000-ish, maybe 99. I'll more clearly reference it later. It's in the yearbook at Keene State College. Not this panel, but the middle panel of the triptych. Well, this panel's in it, but I believe it's obscured by a face. So anyway, there's a historical reference. It was a picture I got out of the Hildebrand Holocaust Library. As was this picture of a rabbi. There's way more to say about that, but I won't now. But I've always, among all my artwork, loved this painting, or loved this face, this image, just about the most. Maybe not the most, but not the most. And this hand, as it turns out when I turned on my camera, you know how those little yellow circles turn up to identify faces? This one showed up, and this one showed up. None of the others did. This one didn't. And when I was working on this painting, it was in an art show at the school, and it was also at that. There was an award ceremony for this. It's incredulous. It's disingenuous to say that I entered it into a contest, but I did with a story a friend of mine wrote. Yeah, that's another story, but I will say that I have the Bird of Paradise written here, which for me was a reference to Artie Lang. But yeah, this face and this hand. I've not drawn many hands in the last 20 years. It's like I've developed a phobia for hands. This is also a hand. But this is probably, it's currently tied for first place among my favorite hands I ever drew. And this tied for first place of my favorite faces. It might be the most real thing I ever painted. And it's a throwback to Guston, who became one of the most least representational painters. And I mean, I can't put a finger on it, which is like a pun within a pun within a pun, referring to Guston, but there's just something about Guston, man. Anyway, also my painting teacher was Jerome Witkin, who had a brother. There was Jerome Witkin and Jared Witkin, maybe? Anyway, they were twins. But yeah, Jerome Witkin, forget about it. And it's not just because he was my teacher's teacher. He was fucking awesome. But, yeah. Once again, serendipity dictated I make this video, and I don't know where I'm going or where I would go. I didn't know I'd go this far so far, and I don't know where I'm going next, but I got a pretty good inkling. I was going to make a light child today, Apparently, maybe it's another Dark Child, or maybe it will be Darkness to the Light. I don't know. We'll see. It's Memorial Day, and we're going to remember. This is the first year of my life I've ever cared about Memorial Day. So yeah, we're stirring it up. Stirring it up. Oh, one more thing before I get started. Let me turn this back on. The pigtail. The pigtail. Those who have been around the world. Agnes. Harriet. Queen Anne. A triumvirate of historic champions. We'll lighten it up a little in a minute. Charlotte. Chariot. Harlot. Harriet. Queen Anne. Memorial Day. Forgive my theatrics. I've had a couple. Been over that. But it's intense, man. We all know history's a lie. We all know it. We all know those who win right. And we've won America. And we've been harsh. Rightfully so, on empire's dominance. The greatest truth comes from fables, parables, true lies, the high story. Darth Vader. I said before we could imagine this is the last image the Emperor saw. The Empire, empiricism. People lump together rationalism and empiricism. Not the same necessarily, but they meet. And where they meet, and it's funny to call anything that we learn rationalism. perfect reason is perfect, and what I know is not. But it approaches, even if from afar it reaches there. And so does yours. Ben Franklin. You know, a lot of this I've gone over, but I'm going to go over again because it's Memorial Day. And this is the first Memorial Day where I feel not patriotic, but where I remember. Memorial. Remembrance. Gratitude. Reflection upon what has come before. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it again. People criticize the drafters, drafting table of the Constitution, of the Declaration of Independence, of the Magna Carta. But it's a lack of insight on our part. And it has been, and I say that because I recognize now that it has been a lack of insight on my part to recognize what has come before and what America did. Ben Franklin is the history as we know it of Ben Franklin. Never mind the real history of Ben Franklin. Is America. Ben Franklin, who, so far as I remember, and I'm no historian, I'm a person involved with story and little numbers. Ben Franklin, as he was tied with France. Ben Franklin, I ain't got my paper, shit. We'll wait on that. Ben Franklin invented the lightning rod. Ben Franklin invented the Farmer's Almanac. Ben Franklin invented the wood stove, which may seem archaic now. Can you refine iron? Can you invent the stove? Naked in the wilderness, boom. I can't. But I recognize the major innovation the wood stove was over the fireplace. It was a major innovation. He could have made the equivalent of trillions, which will bring me back to the chickens I said I was going to start off with, and I didn't. Same with the lightning rod. I've mentioned it before. I had a book when I was in school about 17th and 18th century electricity. And I remember there was only a couple pages on Franklin. And I thought, you know, not an important figure, whatever. You know, and that was back in the day when I was a little more critical of America. And as I understood it then. Am I a ridiculous figure? Well, yes, of course. Would Ben Franklin look down upon me for the way in which I lived my life? I wouldn't say he'd look down upon me, but he might wish I lived it better. Though he was Dionysian to an extent, at least as portrayed. Anyway, about the whole electricity thing, upon further study, if you could call it that, there's that guy who makes BBC documentaries. I think he's, forgive me for my ignorance, I think he's from Iran. He makes these really great BBC documentaries. And I forget his name. But he made this really awesome one that's really long, and it tells more about static electricity and like silk fibers and the way it moves through the body than any place I've ever seen before. And he mentions Ben Franklin, who, in a sense, according to my recollection, which is probably wrong, of the documentary, refers to how essentially Benjamin Franklin theorized the first battery, which was a big fucking metal rod in a bottle of water struck by lightning. And a bunch of dudes in France, Statue of Liberty, National Treasure, that will be important later. I don't know how much later. Carried it out, and he was right. Static electricity. Never mind AC/DC. For those about to rock. Benjamin Franklin invented the wood stove. Major innovation. It's like nuclear power. It's like Edison. And we all, if you're watching this, I'm sure you're familiar with the Edison versus Tesla. Nikola Tesla. J.P. Morgan. I'm sure you're familiar with all of that. I won't go into it, and there are better sources for it anyway. Ben Franklin didn't give a fuck about that. Didn't patent it. And he wrote the laws. He could have sold all that shit up into himself. It's all about the Benjamins. He's on the $100 bill. The bill. $100 bills are the bill of the world. He didn't patent it. He didn't patent the wood stove. He didn't patent lightning rods, which are everywhere. Static electricity. People talk about nuclear, antimatter, solar, and isn't it interesting that we're talking about global warming? Meanwhile, no, this is just a contemplative thing. There's more to say about it that I won't say, partially because I'm unqualified, partially because of what I do understand of it isn't refined enough. But isn't it interesting that the whole deal with like global warming is that we're putting all these hot gases and CO2 in the atmosphere, which is lensing and so on, never mind what is lensing. But that we're putting these reflective surfaces that the sun bounces directly on back up into the atmosphere, to the ionosphere, whatever. Kind of interesting. didn't patent the lightning rod, which is on, I wouldn't say every house, but a lot. He could have patented that. He didn't. It was a gift to the people, and he said as much. In the Farmer's Almanac, which I've heard, which all of us who prescribe to being rational and scientific, SC, pretty much have only heard. You could study science all day, all week, all month, all year. Science derives its power from mathematics, and if you can't speak to root 2, sit your ass down. Well, I'm sitting my ass down, so I'm there with you. Just saying. I'm already embarrassed about this dark child, but I'm going to do it anyway. The Farmer's Almanac, which I understand is the most accurate long-term meteorological predictor of weather patterns. Why? Astrology. Astronomy. Because of the way bodies affect each other. Oh, astrology, this, that. Do you wake up in the morning when the sun comes out? Guess what? You're an astrologer. I had more analogies, but that's pretty much it. You feel good on a sunny day? Guess what? You're an astrologer. Simple as that. Never mind the, what is it, Silas whoever, not Silas Marner. That's not, that he wrote under the name Silas is not coincidental. Ben Franklin. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Did he have man boobs? Were they man boobs? Or were they boobs? Were they hairy boobs? Free the hairy women. Free the hermaphrodites. And the hairy men. I'm a hairy man. Which maybe was a gift. Because maybe I would have never come to this understanding without that thing which I considered a curse, which now I understand was a gift. There are so many hairy women, and there are so many hermaphrodites. Also, this is one of my favorite things. You know, so I understand, because I've not peered as God through the entirety of existence. So I understand, you know, humans have the best eyesight besides birds of prey. Prey with an E, prey with an A. When it was being decided, you know, the emblem, the symbols of the United States, my understanding is, you know, we have the eagle. Germany had the eagle, Rome had the eagle, a lot of countries have the eagle. Then a lot of times there's the double-faced phoenix eagle, Russia, so on. which also could be called the eagle and is related to Scorpio and Scorpion. SC Science. The stinger. Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin wanted, again, if I remember correctly, he wanted our emblem to be a turkey. Turkeys, who are associated with Thanksgiving, turkeys, who, come November, the Holocaust of Holocausts. Never mind chickens. I talked about chickens before. And there's actually a major, even in this little town, worldwide chicken operation right here. That I applied for a job for once. Thank God I didn't get it. Tested negative on the drug test. I couldn't have done it anyway. But this was years back, 20 years ago. It's an estimate, but approximately, according to the information I've retrieved from the interweb, 18 billion chickens are killed every year. So in my life, I'm 43, let's say I'm 40. So we'll add a zero, 180 billion. We'll multiply it by 4. Then of course there's all the chickens who lay eggs, there's all the experimental chickens. So let's say in my lifetime, 1 trillion chickens have been killed. Do chickens have a soul? Do birds have a soul? If you took 1 trillion human beings and put them in those conditions, and I've seen them, how much different from a chicken would you be? Chickens in the wild are mighty. People talk about too many people. There's too much square footage. There's too much horizontal space. There's too much real estate. Virginia Woolf, what did she say? A room of one's own. A room. Not a mansion. A room. We could have 1 trillion people on Earth. Never mind, how big can Earth be? Totally different subject from today. Memorial Day. Remembrance of that underground, above ground railroad. How far back does it go? And where is it going? I'm just a caboose. And I'm so my best of times. I'm so grateful for it. The rest of the time I still forget. Because I'm still trying to handle the truth. And it's hard to handle. Was Ben Franklin even a man? How many people could we ask that of in a world that denies hermaphrodites? Once again, forgive the term. I hate the word intersex. Hate it. And if you don't like it, come up with something better. It's like Dave Mustaine says, NP sells, but who's buying? If there's a new way, do 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 do, I'll be the first in line. Gotta check my time. Ooh. $35.30. So I've got 24-ish, 23 minutes left. So I gotta get to it. Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin. The reason he said he wanted the turkey. Alright, I gotta get to it. The reason he wanted the turkey was because a turkey would never back down from its adversary. That's a paraphrasing of what I read. I don't need more than that. That's the thing about getting the moral of the story. Like, I wanted to talk about The Wizard of Oz, made by the same philosophy of Ben Franklin, made by the same philosophy of the Constitution, which is constantly ridiculed for being a bunch of white dudes who own slaves. They didn't. They didn't own slaves. They didn't. How far underground is the Underground Railroad? How far back in time does it go? Where did slavery come to die? Ben Franklin's America. Why? Because it was the only place left. The Trail of Tears, all these things with Native Americans. There were atrocities here, but there were greater atrocities long before the Ben Franklins came here. Was it only Ben Franklin who came here? No. What about America Vespucci? We're named America. We always talk about Columbus. What about America Vespucci, who we never talk about? Isn't that odd that we live in the United States of America and know nothing about America Vespucci? Do you? You don't. So are you a historian? Are you a scientist? Am I? No. Are you? Probably not. The other reason he named the turkey was because he knew what Thanksgiving would become. How did he know? The Roman Empire, the Nazis, the eagle, birds of prey, praised for their eyesight, for their vision, as they circle and swoop down upon their prey. I remember back in the 90s, maybe early 2000s, I had a picture from the newspaper where at Hampton Beach there was a picture of it wasn't a bald eagle, it was I don't know, it was one of the brown eagles. I don't know much about eagles, but where it was swooping down upon a child to pick it up. It was trying to take the kid to eat it. Eagles, like hawks, birds of prey, they eat their own. So, what is the barely below the surface code, analogy, inference that Ben Franklin was saying about the turkey? Turkeys can barely fly, but when they do, it is gorgeous. And I see them here in the winter, living a miserable, hard existence. Peaceful creatures. Big birds and low on the bird chain, and slow. And what do you call someone when they're foolish? A turkey. What was Ben Franklin for? The Ben Franklin we know, never mind the Ben Franklin we don't know. He was for the weak, the slow, the stupid, the fool, the idiot. For those on the radar of a meal. Turkeys are meals. Ben Franklin stood for saving you from the clutches of those who eat their own. And they're out there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like this. There's more to say about that. It's impossible for them to win, so to speak. But it doesn't mean that they can't kill you on the way. Or me. The eagle is not something to be heralded. Is it a magnificent creature? In so much as it's magnificent. To my mind, the most beautiful large bird's a blue heron. One time I saw a blue heron at a stream. It was a very, very small stream. At a thicket beside the road. Right beside a country store. And I pulled over, and it was back when I had my Samsung Moment. My first video phone, and I wanted to get a video so bad. I have a problem with that. Wanting to get videos, like everything's a Kodak moment. But as I pulled up and sat there and I got out of my car and I was stumbling with my phone without a sound, the way it moved, it was like in slow motion. And I didn't realize blue herons were so agile, but it really was in slow motion. The thicket was so thick and the stream was so small, I could have never imagined that this blue heron could have flown through it. And it did, like a dream. Up the stream. And they fly so high. And I've seen them down at the Connecticut River, and they'll stand still. Their thin legs, can't even see them till they move. We talk about animals that can only see things when they move. That's us too. Waiting. Yeah. It has to eat fish, but at least it doesn't eat its own. Not that I'm criticizing the rest of America or the choice it made, because there's a reason why we're meant to unlock all this stuff now, now being later. I make this now, and there's a later now. And I'm just a proxy. But I've accepted that responsibility. To the best of my ability. And so much as I am a caboose of we, in so much, very important. Make up your own mind. Make up your own mind. Very important. Insomuch as I am a caboose of we and a proxy of they or them, there's nothing that would be asked of me that one wouldn't ask of themselves. There's nothing that I would ask of you that you wouldn't ask of yourself. And I presume that the best part of you wouldn't ask of me what I wouldn't ask of myself, from best to best. There's something inside of you want to change. For me, it's this and this. But the bigger thing that I wanted to change was this. And that's why that came first. To technology, because I'm speaking to a little piece of plastic that they made so that we could do this across time and space, a type of time travel, and there are many types. That are already built in. Gotta check my time. I know I'm getting long-winded. All right, I have 10 minutes. Memorial Day. The wars. Memorial Day is something that happens in the United States. My understanding is that before Abraham Lincoln, what was it called? There was some change in grammar related to the United States before Abraham Lincoln and after Abraham Lincoln. And of course there's the whole Lincoln-Kennedy conspiracy connection as far as like names of cabinets and so on. This, and if you're not familiar with that, look it up if you want, but we are we're sailing a wave that's pretty conservatively, could be stated, is far beyond that. Pretty far beyond that. Conservative. More realistically, we're way the fuck beyond that. And even more realistically, I got a way further way to go than that. As do you. As do we. Never mind Normandy. I can't tell you there are reasons. No one ever told me. I've never been part of anything, any secret society. They built this shit, they built this infrastructure and the internet so that no one would ever again have to join this or that or this or that secret society. There is a secret society that has no name because it's a secret. Am I a part of it? The whole point of all of this, I mean, thousands of years of history, was to get us here. So that there was an infrastructure of information and knowledge that we could come to these things on our own organically. And come to realizations within our own mind so that we could connect the dots, so to speak. They gave us the dots. And they give us momentum behind these dots so we know where they're going. And they go there. It takes a lot of courage. So Memorial Day for me now reaches back thousands of years. If we believe history. And we can assume there's at least some truth to it. The murderousness that happened here in America. What would have happened? Never mind the murderousness of the West, which the white man wasn't necessarily behind. The murderousness of the West was for a purpose, to stop the murderousness of the world. Why the West? Because the West represents the fire, so to speak. But who's behind the power of the West? People from all around the world. I'll get to more of that later. What would have happened to what we call America had not the West come here? Human sacrifice. There's America Vespucci. In one of his letters back to whoever, he wrote about the people he first encountered. How they didn't really eat animals, but they ate their enemies. There's some dispute about some of the authenticity of Vespucci's letters. Well, there's a lot of dispute about everything. But we can identify hatred within ourselves. So we can identify with that mindset, at least to some degree. The idea that this multi-thousand year story is attempting to kill and is killing good is that story that lives as a living thing inside of us, each of us. That murderous intent, that hatred of our brother and our sister. But yeah, today I want to remember Ben Franklin, who didn't give a fuck about patents. He didn't give a fuck. I mean, don't get me wrong. He cared about money. He cared about a lot of things. Never mind all that math that was going on in his head. Never mind who was he really, or he, she. Gave us the lightning rod to protect us from fire and lightning. Harnessed lightning. Gave us fire more efficiently. Gave us predictions and witticisms. Gave us a good story. Who was who was Apollonian and Dionysian. In some sense, there are many ways we can be better and worse. A lot of times lately I'm going in fours. Because there's the might, and then there's the might. And then there's the low. And then there's the low. And he was the best part of the low. And he was the best part of the high. In so much as a white man of then to now can represent that. But his mission reaches back thousands of years to now. I guarantee, and I mentioned this before about the connection with double S's, how back in the day they were like an F and an S, and the F looks like an integral sign of calculus. Guarantee, whether it be the Declaration of Independence and in all the whole Jefferson thing and who actually wrote, the Constitution, all that stuff, that's a different discussion. Never mind the connection between Franklin and Euler. But guarantee, unified theory, nth prime number formula is encoded in those documents. Guarantee it. Why? Because they had to prove it. Because they respect the doubter. They respect people who need proof.